Logic can save you from being triggered. Jay taught me that when people are triggered, logic goes out the window and you can't see or think or speak clearly. And that's okay because that happened to me for many, many years. And I didn't understand why, when I got triggered, I would be so focused on the anger and just couldn't hear what people were saying. And when we would fight, you would say, "Did you hear what I said?" And I would say yes. But when I thought back later, I realized I didn't hear what you said. So if you don't know what logic is, that's okay, because I really didn't understand what it was before we met. So today, Jay is going to teach us about logic. So Jay, what is logic?
There's probably some dictionary definition, but to me, logic is just a way of thinking. And it's a way of thinking to arrive at valid conclusions from valid premises, right? It's a way of thinking to find the truth, or at least your own personal truth. Because if you have your own internal logic and it all lines up, you'll feel good. You'll feel solid. So it's just a way of thinking, and anyone can use it. And everyone does use it from time to time.
So how do we use logic on an everyday basis? Like you said, people will use it from time to time. So then how do we use logic?
So for example, you can sometimes see a child with a round block, a square block, and a triangle block and matching holes to put them in. And if the child was using logic well and quickly and effectively, they would look at all the shapes, see the sides of it and the angles of it and the curves of it, and see the matching holes and pop them all in. But if the child is new to logic and new to these sort of deductions and understandings and ways of thinking, they'll have a much harder time coming up with the solution. So if you take a gifted child and an average child, the gifted child is likely going to have a better grasp of logic at an earlier age, and they're going to nail that challenge quite quickly. Whereas the other kids are going to struggle more. And they'll eventually get it. They'll work out the logic, but you can see clearly who's applying logic better and faster. So it's just a way of thinking, right?
Right.
You can see it in the children, or you can see it with yourself. If you want a better love life with your spouse, you can force them into it or coerce them or badger them or give them a Cosmo quiz. But this is high school shit. It's not a very logical way to get what you want. If you take a gifted relationship partner and you take an average relationship partner, and the gifted relationship partner has a better grasp of logic, they'll know that logically throughout history, like coercing people and forcing your spouse is not really going to pay off. This is not a logical approach. So they just won't take it. They're a gifted relationship partner. They can understand the logic behind all this stuff. They have a clear way of thinking. It's very understandable. They can see the path and the steps. It's a very clearly logical, well thought out reasoning. And they won't do that. They'll be like, I either need to find a partner who wants what I want, or I have to discuss it with them until we reach an agreement and they see the beauty in it, or I have to do it over time in a very gentle way or something. But I know damn well I can't force or coerce them if I really want a fulfilling partnership. This is not going to play out well.
Right.
But if you take an average person in relationships, they actually will try all that stuff, even though it's completely illogical. Like they know from history, this is a full-grown adult in a relationship. They know from history, from years of experience, that forcing people to do stuff is not really going to pay off for you in your relationship. It just doesn't.
Okay, I got you.
Right. It's just not logical, but they'll do it anyways.
All right. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people are using logic all the time. Some of us faster and better and more well applied than others.
Right. Okay. So you said that logic is a way of thinking. So for the people who are like me, who are still like, what? I want to be clear that I understand this. Okay. So it's a certain way of thinking. So then what would be the opposite? Like, because you said illogical, but that doesn't really tell me anything.
Yeah. So a logical way of thinking is very step by step and methodical, and you start from X and you go to Y and you end up at Z. It makes sense, right?
Right.
In a logical way of thinking is, I don't know, I'm fed up with this, I'm frustrated. I bet if I force them, I'll get what I want in a relationship. It's like, this is not logical. Where's the X, Y, Z? Where's the process? How can you? Okay. Logical thinking is clear and defensible. You can explain it and understand it, and a child would get it. Like, it's logical. Like,
okay, so just I want to be like dumb and super clear.
Sure.
So the logical thinking is step by step, like when we did that game, the logic game, where if we messed a step, we had to start over and figure out where we went wrong. So logical thinking is step by step when you can see where the missing parts are, right?
Yeah, that game was a programming game.
Yeah.
And coding is pure logic.
Okay.
The computer only understands logic. So you have to tell it step by step logically what you want it to do. And if you're not clear and precise and flawless with every step, the computer will not give you the result you want. And your game will have bugs, or your thing will break, or nothing will work.
Right.
And the same goes to if you're a parent teaching a child. They'll ask why until what you've said makes sense. Like you better have a logical explanation for the most part when they're trying to learn. I mean, you can sometimes get away with, oh, Santa's real because I say so, but it's not really a logical thing to say that. And it will get rid of the child for a while, but they won't buy into what you're saying. And they're always going to be questioning it. Like the logic doesn't sit. Logical thinking is defendable and solid and precise and step by step and methodical. And it's a very elegant form of thinking that we use to teach children, like B follows A and C follows B. And
okay, this makes more sense to me. Okay, but I understand.
Right, but stuff like you see online a lot of the time is just like, well, my friend Joe is a woke liberal and he's fine. Like, so I guess everyone's fine. It's like, what? So, that's not logical. Where there's no step-by-step A follows B precise methodology there. That's like, you met someone, they were nice. You made a random conclusion about all of the world, right? These are illogical generalizations, and you see them all the time.
So then would you say that logic is step-by-step analytical step thinking, and illogical is more emotional, knee-jerk, triggered reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't know, leaps of faith and intuition, and I feel like this and I feel like that, and I'll do whatever I want, and I don't care what you say. And I had an experience yesterday that proves you wrong. Like that doesn't prove anything wrong. That's illogical. That is not logical proof.
I'll be honest with you. This sounds like, and I know not everyone, but it sounds like men and women. Like it sounds like logical thinking is what men tend to do more, and women tend to do all the other stuff that we called illogical. Sure.
I mean, it's whatever. Like the world needs all kind of thinking. I'm not against or for either kind. And
no.
And I don't mind who uses which. I'm just telling you, you asked me what logic is. I'm breaking it down.
It was just when you were talking about each one, this was and I know lots of women use logic, and there's women that code and women that understand this, and vice versa. I get that. But when you started talking about it and breaking it down, it just, to me, it was more of a masculine and feminine, not really boy girl.
Sure. Maybe that's a logical generalization. I couldn't say.
That's good. Okay. Well, thank you. Okay. I feel like is a sentence that I used to use on a regular basis. And then I would say, I feel like, and then try to back it up with data. Like, I feel like blah, blah, blah. But I realize when I start a sentence with, I feel like, the person, you or whoever, is waiting for feelings, not actual thought or data or logic in this case. So, and I've seen a lot of women doing this repeatedly online, on other podcasts and conversations with men, defending feminism or just talking in general, right? So my question is, are women less logical than men?
Well, let me ask you a question. Are kids less logical than adults?
Yes.
Less logical than adults? Or are they more tenacious and more logical? Like, if this means yes, then this means no, and this means black, and that means white. And you said this yesterday, so like, are kids more logical or less logical?
Okay. When you asked me,
does it depend on the age?
No, I think it depends on the age. So when you asked me, I automatically thought of a baby that I know in my life who I would not call logical. But then when you put it that way, and I think about my 15-year-old son, for the most part, he would like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This, like, he's a lot faster to put something together than the 1-year-old, So Yeah, maybe it depends on the age.
Right. And kids are both genders or multiple genders, or I don't, oh my God.
That's for a whole nother episode. Yes.
But yeah, so if kids on the whole are better at logic than adults, but like what about an engineer or a lawyer, right? Are they? So the reason I ask that is because it doesn't really matter who's better or why or when.
Sure.
Everyone has a brain and everyone can use that brain however they want. We can practice logic anytime we want. We can practice intuitive leaps of faith and anecdotes and I feels and all of these other non-logic forms of thinking anytime we want as well. Some kids practice logic quite a bit, especially when they want to get their way or they want to call their parents out on something.
Yeah.
Some engineers or lawyers might practice logic more than anybody. But there might be like a woman CEO who practices logic more than all of her kids. I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. If I were to go dig up the data or do some surveys or research, it would probably turn out that women practice different forms of thinking than logic fairly often, or like feminine leaning people practice that. And it would probably turn out that masculine leaning folks practice logic more and are consequently better at it, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is you and the viewer. And the fact that you have logic available to you at any time, you can use it at any time. And it's up to you if you want to practice it. And you can become better than other people who use it, or you can be worse than other people who use it.
Fair play. Okay. So for those of us, and I put myself in this category 100%, whether it's because I'm a woman or I don't like math or whatever reason it is, I haven't in the past used logic in the best ways that I could. I have been emotional and I trust my intuition, but kind of over data even sometimes, which hasn't always been the best idea. Always, sometimes, but not always. So for people like me who will see the value in being logical and really want to be better at this, can you give us some tips on how we can improve this? Because I know we played that game that we mentioned earlier. That
7 billion humans.
Thank you.
The game is called 7 billion humans.
Yeah.
It's a fun little game where you make 7 billion humans do all the little tasks for you. But
Girls,
you have to be very logical. Yeah, it's the cutest
so
game
cute.
ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. I was just filling in the name of the game for you.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I know there's a game like 7 billion humans, which again, it's really cute and really fun. And like when you told me we're going to play a logic game, I was like, oh, great, fun. But it actually was. I really enjoyed it. And it taught me to have more patience for the step by step, where I tend to want to rush in and I have to do this thing. How can I do it as fast as possible? And that hasn't always worked out that great in some areas of my life. So for people like me who see this as a valuable thing and want to improve, do you have any tips other than the 7 billion humans?
Yeah, it's just practice. When you think a certain way, you're practicing that way of thinking and you're forming new neural pathways. And those neurons will fire and wire faster and faster and more often, and you get good at stuff. When you practice learning crafting, at first it's like, oh, this is overwhelming. There's so much stuff. And eventually you're like, I could do this in my sleep without thinking.
Yes. When
I first practiced logic, it was like, oh, this is overwhelming. Oh, I got it wrong or whatever. Now it's like, I could do logic in my sleep, like without thinking, which kind of defeats the purpose, but you get the point.
I understand. It's like second nature to you now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are different ways of practicing. When I was a kid, I had a book called The Fantastic Book of Logic Puzzles, and it had a dragon on the front. And it had cute little stories and logic puzzles on each page. Like, I don't know, there's a dragon hoarding his gold, and the knight wants the gold, but the dragon will only give it to him if he answers 3 questions or whatever. And you have to logic it out. And the answers were all in the back. But I took it as a challenge. Like, I want to get this without going in the back. So I would work on my logic. Or B follows A, C follows B, D follows C. So what's next? And you're like, oh, E, that's logical. But then they make them harder and harder, and the patterns get weirder and weirder. And you're like, oh, it's E. And they're like, no, it's Q. And you're like, why is it Q? And then they explain the logic. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. So a simple book of logic puzzles is a great way to practice. Or you can go to brilliant.org/logic. And brilliant.org is like a learning site, a thinking site, and they have all these little exercises, online exercises and lessons and courses. And they have a great one on logic that you can apply yourself to learn. And if none of that works for you, you can just start practicing it every day in your own life by breaking things down into bite-sized chunks, step by step. Logic is not rushed thinking. If you're rushing your thinking, you've probably abandoned logic. It's not a rushed thing. It's a calm, collected, patient thing. Eventually, when you get good at it, you can do it quickly, like playing speed chess or something.
Right.
But to get good at speed chess, you start with normal chess, which is very slow, methodical, and bit by bit.
Yeah.
As you learn the steps and the pieces and how they move and what are good openings and what are good defenses, then you can try speed chess.
Right. Okay.
But generally, the speed chess is still the same methodical logic. It's just someone practiced really well until they can do it quickly. Logically quickly.
Right. Makes sense.
So for example, you could take anything you want, any goal you want, and plot out a logical path to it. If someone tells me I want a ton of money, and I'm like, how are you going to get that? What's your path? And they don't have some logical steps. I'm like, what is this? Like, how are you going to get anything? If you say I'm thirsty and you don't have a logical path to getting the water, you're fucked up.
Again,
right?
To be clear, just so if we use the water example, would this be logical thinking? And this is a simple example. I get up, walk to the sink, get the glass, pour the water, drink the water.
Yeah, that will get you your goal. And you had to do that exact logical thinking as a child because you couldn't even reach the glass. So you were like, I'm going to stretch up for the counter and try and get the glass. And I know I'm not going to get it, but logically, a parent's going to see me and they're going to come bring it to me.
Okay.
You have your own logical path. You've always had your own logical path to get your goals. And most people do it for small little goals. They have a logical path. Oh, I'll get up and I'll get the glass. Oh, they're dirty. I'm going to wash them first. Yeah. They just handle all the logical steps. No problem. But as soon as you give them a big goal, like make $1 million this year, they're done.
Okay. So that's really good that you mentioned that. So like, so some things in our life, we don't really think about as being logical because I never considered getting a glass of water or getting dressed. You know, I have a system for how I get dressed and how I do my makeup and stuff. So like, these are not things I ever considered as logical, but now I understand it's kind of natural within all of us. And we just have to tap into it. And I asked a question earlier about if women are not as good at this as men. And the reason I ask is because we tend as women to be more emotional. This is just how we normally are. This is a natural thing for us, and that's okay. So now I kind of understand as a woman why I never considered logic in my life. Like I never thought I'd be talking about this topic ever. But this is not the first time I've had this conversation, not this particular conversation, but conversation about logic and learning how to do it and learning how to be better and learning how to improve myself. And while this may seem like an unimportant topic to some people or to a woman or to someone who doesn't really pay attention to these things, it's actually pretty important for communication, right?
It's pretty important for accomplishing anything.
Yeah, right.
Men accomplish a lot of things because they can set a goal and plot out a logical path to it. And if you ever see like a woman CEO or girl boss or whatever you call it succeeding, she applied logic. She had a goal and she applied a logical path to it. Sarah Blakely had a goal to sell Spanx. She was having trouble and obstacles and things were going wrong at every turn. And she just kept adjusting her logical path. But you don't see this of like, you know, your girlfriend or her daughter or chick down the street. It's with Sarah Blakely you see it.
Yeah.
It's logical. Beyonce had a logical system for practice and rehearsal and school and work and whatever. And she had a goal and she's like, I'm logically going to do this. Yes. She wouldn't deviate from it. It's a very logical way of thinking.
Right.
Anyone can do it. It's just the people you look up to have done it.
Yeah. And
it's
so,
important.
and I see that. And I understand that now. I think some people out there may not really understand the importance of logic and why it matters. But you mentioned like to get a glass of water, This is something easy. We don't think about, we just do. But ask somebody or tell somebody, tell somebody to make $1 million this year, and they freak out because they may not understand that they have those steps already to figure that out within them.
They're both super easy.
Like it is super easy. So
do you know how many? There's more millionaires now than ever. There are more millionaires now than ever by a landslide.
Mm-hmm.
And they all follow basically the same steps. If you study them, you'll see they all basically follow the same steps. Napoleon Hill did it. He studied all the millionaires, wrote Think and Grow Rich, laid out most of the steps right there. I mean, there's even better books than that now. But the point is, there's a logical path to this. It's like getting a drink of water. It takes a little longer. There's a bit more involved. Mm-hmm. But you could sit down and draw it out on paper. Here's the steps.
You wrote the 8
steps to
monetize anything.
Yeah.
And these are logical steps. Like you literally wrote out.
They're extremely
in our book, Eyes Wide Open, Volume 1. There's a bonus that comes with that, which is the 8 steps to monetize anything. And I know these 8 steps because you taught me this. You taught me everything I know about business and et cetera. But I didn't realize those 8 steps this is the logical way to monetize anything. So it's not called that. We don't ever refer to it that way, but this is what it is.
Maybe I should market it. The 8 logical steps to monetize everything.
Right. But just like those 8 logical steps to get up and get a glass of water, these are the 8 logical steps to monetizing anything. But you can use that, not necessarily the 8 steps, but logic to step your way to pretty much anything you want.
Yeah.
Weight loss, makeup, marriage. I'm like going over it in my head. I'm thinking all the different steps it would take. So this is within all of us, even those of us who might say, oh, I'm not a logical person. I'm more emotional. I'm intuitive. I'm intuitive as well. I have very good intuition, yet I don't use my intuition to put on my makeup or make money or get a glass of water. I use logic for those things.
Sure. Use any thinking you want. I don't care. People should just use what works for them. But if you're not getting anywhere with intuition and emotion nonstop left and right, you might want to give logic a try. It's sitting there waiting in your brain for you to give it a try. You used it when you were a kid. You can use it as an adult. It will help you. It's a great way of thinking. I personally use both often.
Well, this makes sense when I see people arguing online and one person is emotional and the other person is logical. That logical person, no matter what they're saying, will blow that other person out of the water because they're not saying anything of relevance. I think, you're being mean, you're this and you're that. And the other person is giving actual or asking for questions, asking for solutions. Give me examples, give me data. And the other person is just can't do it. So, okay. This makes a lot of sense. And I understand this now on a deeper level. So thank you. I love when you give me insights and change my perspectives constantly. But I love it when it happens on camera even more. Because then other people can see like this stuff is not planned out. None of this last 5 minutes of this conversation was even in my outline. So thank you. You're amazing. I love you.
My pleasure.
Okay. When we met, I was a really negative person. And anyone who tried to give me positive spins about anything made me hate them more. Like, oh, you're a cheerful, positive person? I hate you. Go away. But I've learned that life is supposed to be happy all the time with pockets of unhappiness, right? And I actually had to use logic to figure that out. Like you taught me this. You taught me how to use logic to improve my life. So in Eyes Wide Open, Volume 1, you wrote, if I tell folks you're born valuable, destined for wealth, their brain spits many logical reasons why I'm wrong. But if I tell them life's hard and you're destined for poverty, their logic often agrees without judgment. So why do some people find it easier to argue the negative side of their life instead of the positives that could improve their life?
It's mostly because of training. As a kid, we grow up around parents and teachers and peers, and we model them through osmosis. Mm-hmm. If they're walking, we learn to walk. If they're talking, we learn to talk. Mm-hmm. If they're disciplined, we pick up discipline. If they're undisciplined, we pick up a lack of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're around people who only use logic to argue for the negative, like someone tries to say something nice and they automatically poo-poo it and put it down and, I don't think it's going to work. And they poke holes in it and they criticize it and all this like negative logic and analytical put downs, then you'll grow up trained on that and you'll do it too. And you'll perpetuate that cycle unless you personally choose to break it. If you wake up and think, you know what, I don't think I'm using logic very well here. I use it to poke holes in everything, but I never use it to boost myself up or give reasons why something might succeed. Until you do that or someone helps you do that, you'll probably just use logical arguments to promote failure.
Okay. So these are just habits that we've picked up.
Mm-hmm. I was like that as a kid. I was super negative and I would use logic to argue negatively for everything. But when someone wanted to make a positive point, all of a sudden my logic disappeared.
Right.
Where's all my awesome logic now? Now I'm silent, sitting in the corner.
Right. Because it didn't go with whatever you were feeling or thinking.
If you have a negative narrative, you're going to use your logic to promote that negative narrative.
Right.
If you have a positive narrative, you could use that logic to promote your positive narrative. Logic is a way of thinking. It's not something reserved for negative or reserved for positive.
Right.
And when you have a court case, one side is arguing very logically that the guy did it and he's a terrible man. And you have another side who's arguing very logically with tons of logic that he's a positive dude, a great man, and he didn't do it. Both are employing logic. Both are using logical thinking and making very strong logical cases for the exact opposite side, positive and negative. And then the jury has to decide which logic was most solid, most well-argued, most clear, most sensible, most rational. Maybe they choose right or wrong. I don't know. Now we're relying on the jury's logic and all 12 of them and how their logic goes. But those two lawyers, they're masters at logic. And they're clearly arguing both the positive and the negative. You can too. You could be one of those lawyers. Just step up and argue for the positive. Let me see your logic. Use it for something positive for once. But everybody wants to be a prosecutor, blaming the evil, being logical about the evil. No one's playing the defense lawyer in their life. No one's praising others and logically defending them, like bringing proof and reason to why they're so great. Nobody boosts people up with logic. It's rare.
Right. Well, when we met, I was a really super negative person. And if I did use logic, it was definitely to argue my negative narrative, like blaming everything outside of myself. Everyone and everything was at fault except me.
It's not logical.
It was not logical. And when we met and you started injecting huge doses of logic into my life, and I was like, what? Like, who is this person? and one of the things I always wanted was to be a happy person and to be a positive and kind and loving person and not have the reputation to be mean and be careful with Mimi because, she's going to yell at you or she's going to go off on you or
she's a total B word.
Yes. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be that kind of person that I had become. So I decided to be more a positive person and start injecting positivity into my narrative. So is there a way to use logic to help this for somebody who maybe is in the same position and wants to be a more positive person and be better?
Yeah, just give it a try. Clearly you're good at it, right? If you're good at being logical about the negative, we know you're good at logical thinking.
Right.
All right, good. You got some logic. You got some logic skills. Just put it towards a positive use. Prove logically something good. When you're like, well, I guess I'll never succeed for this reason and that reason, and look at all the evidence, and I've tallied it all up, and I've done all the research. It's just never going to happen. Like, fine. Now you're prosecuting yourself. You made a great case for why you suck and why you're going to fail. Great. But now I challenge you, use that logic on the defense side. Pretend you're the defense lawyer now, and you got to counter that. I want to see just as strong logic proving why you succeed. I could do it because when we're kids, we only know a little. When we're adults, we know more. you only get more valuable. You only get wiser. You only get smarter. You only get more lessons. If you were doing okay as a kid, you can do better now. If you were okay at swimming as a kid, you can be fantastic at it now. If you were okay at talking as a kid, you can be a wonderful talker now. So logically, you're only getting better. Logically, you're more likely to succeed now. On top of that, you've gained more skills. You've gained more experience. You have a better radar. You have a better judgment of people. You can discern character better. On top of that, you have access to more resources. Way back in the day, people didn't have the internet and they couldn't find out all this information. Now you can self-diagnose your mental health and go cure it online from the comfort of your own home or a library. You're more likely to succeed now than ever. It's ridiculous. I could make a case forever of why, especially if I had the person in front of me and I'm like, well, tell me some things. Tell me some stories about your life.
Yeah.
Did you ever cure any illnesses? Did you ever heal from any injuries? Have you ever done anything impressive? Have you ever earned a single award ever? Have you ever gotten praise or a compliment from any other human? Now we're making a case. Oh, it looks like you're good at XYZ. You've gotten praise and compliments for ABC. You know what? There might be a career waiting for you here. It's a very good sign when you start getting praise for these things. It means you're a natural. It means you're going to make an impact on someone like this. I could just go on and on defending someone's success, but whatever. Who cares if I can do it? The thing is, if you're so logically negative about yourself and prosecuting yourself, I want to see that logic put to promoting your success and to making a defense case as to why you will succeed. Anyone can do it. Just give it a shot.
Now you guys can see the logic injection that I got in the beginning. This is the same things you taught me in the very beginning. When I was like, I'm not valuable and I suck. And except I got it way harsher.
And that's illogical.
Yeah.
I'm not valuable, I suck is completely illogical.
I know.
So who would say this?
A sad sack who doesn't understand logic.
No, but where's the logic? They have logic in other parts of their life. If they're thirsty, they follow the steps and get a glass of water. Well, where's the logic? And I'm not valuable, I suck.
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people don't realize what actually logic is and what it's not. And so I had no idea. I one time...
No, everybody knows. I'm going to interrupt you. Everybody knows. They know when they're being illogical and irrational. It doesn't even feel right in their heart and soul. Human beings have a natural affinity for logic. You take anyone to a movie and all of a sudden they're the logic detective. All of a sudden, they have the best logic on planet Earth. That doesn't make sense. No way. That's a plot hole. Does the director even know what he's doing? Who wrote this? I could write better.
Yeah, fair play.
Freaking ruthless logicians.
I've seen it on.
And they don't even need training. They can just sense it. And if they met someone else at a coffee shop and the person was like, "Oh, I'm not valuable, I suck," they'd be like, "That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's illogical." But then when they go home alone in their own private room, "Oh, I'm not valuable, I suck." What happened to all the logic? At the movie, at the coffee shop, you were the most logical human. All of a sudden, you're the most ridiculous, whack, off-the-wall, irrational, crazy person. It's ridiculous. And then they're like, "I don't understand logic. I don't know what it is." Get out of here.
What I actually meant was the word, not necessarily the thing. I didn't realize all these things. All good. I didn't realize all that stuff was called logic. I had no idea I never considered the way I thought or the thing. I was laughing when you were talking about the movie thing because that was me. I would go to the movies and I would see a ridiculous movie and I'd be like, what about this? What about that? There's a plot hole here. I would...
Oh, but I'm bad at logic. No, you're amazing at it.
But like I said, I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't know that's what I was doing in the moment.
But when people go to the movies and do that, they're just calling out a break in the steps. They're like, those logical steps don't make sense. There's a plot hole.
Yeah.
Same thing with anything you're doing. How are you going to get the water? I'm going to teleport there. That's not logical. There's what? That doesn't make sense. It's a plot hole.
Right.
You can have a plot hole in your own life. I'm going to make $1 million. How? Oh, win the lottery. Maybe this is not this is a plot hole.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to make $1 million. How? I'm going to gently and slowly build an audience in a niche by satisfying one of their core needs and desires and resonating with them. I'm going to do it in my own personal way and style. And I'm going to keep up with it because it's something I enjoy doing. It's like, oh, okay, I see. And once the audience is built up, I'm going to start offering them a product or a service or a way to support me, a donation, something to monetize it. And at that point, I started a chain reaction. And as that income comes in, I'm going to reinvest it back in all my services and expanding my business and expanding my audience. And soon I'm going to have $1 million. Oh, very logical. No plot holes.
And I just want to point out that example you just gave is roughly the way to actually make $1 million.
It's one example.
There's a few little holes in there, but for the most part,
you can do it as a venture capitalist by investing in 1 or 10 companies or whatever. There's other ways, but yeah, basically that's the 8 steps to monetize anything.
I just wanted to point out the beautiful, juicy bonus that you just offered. So thank you.
Yeah, people can sense when something is illogical. They can. And we have a left brain and a right brain, and we can tell which mode or hemisphere we're sort of using. I mean, most people can't feel it in tune, but they can tell when they're being logical at the movie theater or when they're just enjoying the beautiful story and not looking for plot holes. Like, people can tell when they're being logical with the friend at the coffee shop. No, of course you don't suck. Or when they're being illogical in the privacy of their own home. Yeah, I suck and I'm not valuable. Like, people can tell. Everyone knows.
I agree. I just didn't know it had that name. So I'm kind of glad we're doing this and explaining this. And somebody who's really good at logic may be like, duh. But sorry, dude, there's a lot of us out there that had no idea. I did not know that this was a thing that I was capable of. But my point is that there's this thing that's out there that we use every single day. And there's a large part of us, and I'm going to say more feminine leaning folks, it might be, and it's not a negative or anything. It's only my experience as a woman. It's only my experience as knowing a lot of females. And when I compare the way men in my life have been and the women in my life that have been, the men tend to be more logical and use all those steps that you have outlined today on this podcast versus the women in my life, and myself included, or I didn't even know it was a thing. So I really appreciate you teaching me this because this really helped my life. I wouldn't have thought, if you told me a few years ago, you're going to use logic and you're going to be mad at people who don't, I'd be like, yeah, right, whatever. I don't even know what that is. But it's true. This is my life now. And I could use logic better, but I'm super grateful that I've learned how to improve my life with this. So thank you. And so if you understand this, then go watch something else. Love you. So when I was doing research for this episode, I had a really hard time finding recent resources to help me with this. So is logic a topic that people just don't care about?
Honestly, in our society, it seems like not. It seems that modern society has been trained away from logic, been trained to jump to conclusions, been trained to be irrational and emotional. And some people will argue that it's a conspiracy from the ruling classes and the ruling elite to keep us under their thumb. Some people will say it's just been socialized into us over time. Some people will say something else entirely, but it doesn't really matter because it's important. It's vital. And people's lives and our society will fall apart without it. And so the less we have of logic, the more society is going to go to hell in a handbasket, because there's no methodical steps. There's no path to a goal. There's no pathway to solutions or to getting better. You can't get the water unless you have the logical steps. You can't get the $1 million unless you have the logical steps. You can't fix the climate or help the marginalized groups or whatever without logic. And so everyone's just raging and they want to change all this stuff. And it's like, great, where's your logical path? You're all just like voices shouting in the wind, right?
Yeah.
And you're wasting your time and energy. A logical person wouldn't even be shouting in the wind. They'd be head down, knuckle down, logically pursuing the steps to make change happen. So it's absolutely essential And whether it happens now or later, people's lives are going to fall apart without logic. And they're going to wake up and realize, oh yeah, it was important. We should get back to that. We don't have a lot of critical thinking in society today.
Right.
But logic and critical thinking are the game changers. Like if you're sleeping on it, you're losing. And if you get a handle on it, you're going to crush it.
Okay.
That's why Sarah Blakely and Beyonce crush it and everyone else just wishes they were them.
Right.
They had a logical path to what they were doing. First, I need to get good at this. Then I need this resources. Then I need these connections. And I have to make friends with that boardroom. And I have to do these things.
Yeah.
And they're on it. And they're on it. And they don't have to sacrifice their femininity to do it. Beyonce is still a pretty feminine person.
Mm-hmm.
But she can use logic when she needs to and get shit done.
True.
Everybody else needs it too. Your kids need it. You need it. Society needs it. Everybody needs it. You look at what happened with the pandemic. There was zero logic, like through everybody. Even our experts didn't have logic.
Mm-hmm.
That like it was ridiculous, right? And now they're coming back and apologizing and taking it back. And it's like, whoever was right or wrong, I don't give a fuck. But there wasn't a whole lot of logic and critical thinking happening.
Right.
It was just panic people yapping and blabbing their side. And they would throw in bits of logic just to get their agenda across, but they weren't patiently, calmly, logically walking through things to get to an appropriate result.
True.
They were emotional and panicked.
Yeah.
All of them. Basically all of them. There's like 2 that weren't or something.
Yeah.
Out of millions.
Yeah. Fair play. Yeah.
So this is what you get. You get 2 years of craziness and then apologies afterwards. Like, oh, our bad. I don't know if guess we got carried away, but it was rough circumstances. There was no time for logic. No time for logic? All right. Good luck, man. Good luck with your society.
Right. All right.
Maybe you should put someone logical in charge.
Right. That'd be nice.
Yeah. A good leader has their own intuition, but also has huge access to logic.
Okay. Thank you.
A good leader makes logical decisions and people are like, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. You always make really logical decisions and
Thanks.
I always trust your choices and the direction you're taking us personally and professionally. So yeah, thank you. You answered my question actually with all that. My next question was like, why should they care more? And you just answered it all. So thank you very much. Then I see a lot of people argue online, right? And so most people are using logic to win their side of the argument, mostly in general. So is there a way to learn how to use this to win an argument? Like, could I get really good at this and like actually win an argument with you?
Yeah, I usually win most of my arguments.
I know.
But it's like, it's not really winning. Someone who's using logic well and properly doesn't care about being right. They don't care about right and wrong. They care about what's logical. Like if you're teaching the child that the triangle block goes in the triangle hole, it's not about you being right and the child being wrong. Like, oh, I want to put it in the star hole. Like that's not where you're coming from. That's not the place you're coming from. You're just like, son or daughter, this is not logical. This will not get the result you want. I'm sorry. You have to put the triangle in the triangle hole. You know what? You figure it out. But like, I know the logical truth.
Yes.
And so this is the proper way to win an argument is you just say the truth. Be the truest person in the room. Have the truest thing to say. Have the highest integrity. Make the best point. Not to hurt others and not to be right and not for ego, just because it is the logical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if you walk into that forest full of bears, it may be unsafe. This is a logical thing. Your intuition may tell you, you may want to run in there and do it. I'm not going to stop you because I don't care about being right. I have been very clear and firm about this. It's a very illogical thing to do. That is a grizzly bear forest.
Yeah.
There are like 100 maulings there a year. You could become one of the 100 maulings. Please, logically, go anywhere else on planet Earth. Or if you're going to go, at least take bear repellent or something. Like get right. Your gear right or something. Right. Take some bear training, something. And so I'm not trying to be right. I'm just making logical sense. And with the child, I'm not trying to be right or win my side or get an agenda. I'm simply trying to put out the logical truth in a way that people can understand. I'm being as clear and concise as I can to explain the logic. Because logic, like, it's a tool that you can use as a weapon. But if you're using it well, you're using it as a tool constructively to help others, to help yourself, to help the planet, to help society, to help others, to help the world. And so the best way to do this is before you even start the logical argument, before you start the debate, before you start making your point, you go do your own work. You go get your shit together. You make your point straight in your mind, in your heart. Write it out if you have to. Talk it out if you have to. Before you go talk to that child and tell him, put the triangle block in the star. That's wrong. Like, you might be great at logic. Like, you might convince him to do it, but you've just hurt everyone. Now he's wasting his time. You spent your time arguing. You used all the logic in the world to give him the wrong truth. So before you use logic, make sure you have a true thing to say. If you're going to say all the liberals are evil or all the conservatives are terrible, like, you can make logical arguments to make these points. A lawyer could go and make a case for this. You can use logic to do this. But that is using it as a weapon. That's not healthy. Yes. That's using it to win your side and make your point and get your agenda across and convince others of your narrative. No. How about you go home, take a moment, and really figure out this left-right situation before you go arguing logically for one side? Because logically, they're both ridiculous. But if I come in and I say that sometimes, at some points, in some societies, in some cultures, or some situations, a liberal approach is going to be helpful and beneficial. And other times, in other cultures, in other societies, in other situations, in other moments in history, a conservative approach is going to be helpful. I have a logical standpoint because that has absolutely been the case throughout history. Sometimes, on some issues, humanity needs a liberal approach. And on some issues, humanity needs a conservative approach. And so I have a firm, clear, rock solid, unbelievably defensible position to make a logical case. No one can assail this. No one can argue against this. And so I can win any argument because I'm just talking about the logical truth. I've gone home and I've thought it through. I've done the critical thinking. I've looked at centuries, millennia of history, and I've determined that this is in fact the case. The only logical thing you can say is that in some situations, a liberal approach is beneficial and healthy and helpful. And in other situations, a conservative approach is beneficial and healthy and helpful. And so now, because I have a firm, solid premises, this is called your premises, when you understand where you're coming from, the point or the platform or your position on something before you make your case, if it's firm and solid, you'll never be knocked off of it. It's like king of the hill. Like, if you're at the top of the hill, everyone's going to be trying to tugging you down left and right with their logical bullshit. Like, you're a terrible person. How dare you say that? No, my liberal friends are terrible. Oh, my conservative friends are terrible. Oh, whatever. They're just trying to like nitpick at you, anecdotal evidence and weird logic and whatever. They're going to try and get their way. But nothing will rock me off the platform. Like, I'm right. You're wrong. I had the most logical thing. I'm like, put the triangle square in the triangle block. That's it. Like, if you want a beneficial result, this is how it goes. If you want to have struggles for all day, try it your way. If you want to keep trying to shove the triangle block into the star shape or whatever, good luck. And like, if you all want to keep arguing, go ahead. But I'm right. And logic holds up. It stands up. No one can ever argue against this. No philosopher, no politician, no lawyer, no pundit, no expert, no Jordan Peterson, no Jonathan Haidt, none of them. I'm right. It's logical. Unassailable logic. But it's because I come from a good place, seeking the truth only, with integrity. I have no dog in the fight. I'm not looking for any agenda. I have no narrative. I'm simply aiming to clarify the logic of the situation for anyone who's willing to listen. That's a healthy thing. And this is how you use logic well. And if you do this, you will win all your arguments, because it's not even an argument. There is no argument. The truth is the argument. Make sure you have the truth first, then be logical about it. If you want to make a logical argument about how to make money, get me and like 10 other gurus. and they're all promoting their business and their thing and their workshop and their class and their course. This is how you make money. And mine, which is just the logical steps of making money, works on all courses, works on all gurus, works for every industry, works for everything, for everyone, because it's like the steps of getting water. It just works. Like, that's it. That's the steps. You have some kind of vessel or container, even if it's your hand, something to hold the water in. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. Like, even if it's a hose that's holding the water, like there must be a container for the water. This is logical.
Yeah.
Right. So I start there. I hope that answers your question. You can use logic to win debates. And the best way to do this is have the truth as a premises, the truth as a foundation, the truth as a platform, and then to make all your logical arguments from that truth. And logic will go wrong, or you'll get your logic demolished if you're arguing some weird narrative that's not really based in the truth. Because logic will get to the heart of the matter. People will dismantle your logic until they get to the truth.
Well, I think this is the issue with the right and the left. Both, whatever side is arguing whatever, some of them anyway, are using emotions and illogical arguments and calling it wrong. And then they get frustrated and start yelling and become more emotional. And because they didn't start with truth. You know, I don't really want to get into like gender and all that on this podcast episode right now, but these people, right or left, don't want to begin their argument with truth. So from there, you can't really go anywhere if the core argument of whatever topic they're talking about isn't based on truth. So this makes a whole lot of sense to me, and actually it will be really helpful when I'm out there talking to both sides about different topics. So thank you. I really appreciate this. I've learned a lot on this episode, even though I knew a lot about what we were going to talk about beforehand. Well, I knew about logic before, so this was really helpful. So thank you. So can I use logic to be better? I mean, you made the example of the 8 steps to monetize anything. Can I use logic for other things besides the things we mentioned, like being a better parent, being a better spouse, better at business, these kinds of things? Can we use it for that stuff?
Absolutely. You can use logic to achieve any goal. That's what it's for. Methodical, analytical, clear, step by step to achieving things.
Okay.
Name something.
Parenting.
Oh. Okay. So you want to be a better parent?
Yeah.
Okay. So logically, like, you can look at the sentence, I want to be a better parent. So logic is a lot about language. Mm-hmm. Just like in programming languages, you have to use very precise terms to get the computer to do what you want.
Right.
In big companies and corporations, they're very picky about their vision statement or their mission statement or the language.
Right.
And it's not because they're like pedants with words or whatever. It's because logically the whole company is going to veer off in a weird direction if you use the wrong language, the wrong meaning. If you say we want to be a tolerant company, then everyone's sort of tolerating everybody else. If you say our mission statement is to be an accepting company, then everybody's accepting and embracing everybody else. And people will point to it. People point to the Constitution nonstop, left and right. Constitution this, Constitution that. This is the word they use. This is the word they use. I'm like, these words are from like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Were they right at the time? Are they still right? Has anyone bothered to look? Did the logic hold up? I don't know. But people are ruthless about these words and holding people to them. Mm-hmm. The words matter.
Yeah.
Especially when you're being in logic mode or data mode. Sometimes we have arguments on the podcast because you used the wrong word. I'm not trying to be an ass about it. It's just we're talking for the masses now. And if you just throw, people are always like that. And I'm like, well, people are sometimes like that or often like that. And you're like, okay, I get it, whatever. I'm just picking the words. I'm like, no. We are in the public eye and we are saying something for the public. And we owe it to them and ourselves to be clear and precise about this.
Yeah.
We don't want to say everyone's like that or always like that and so on and so forth. So with logic, we look at the sentence, I want to be a better parent. Mm-hmm. Okay, we know want. This is what you're aiming for.
Yes.
To be, okay, we get that. I want to exist as one.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Better parent, though. Are these the words we want to use? Is this the logic we want? What is a better parent? What does a parent do? What is a better one do? Maybe we have to, our first step is to define what better parent means and is for us. Because you say it to our next door neighbor, and you say it to our past friends, and you say it to yourself, and you say it to your mom. Everyone has a different idea of what a better parent is.
Fair play.
So how are you going to achieve anything? The first thing logic does is break down these words. Remember I said break things down into bite-sized pieces and bite-sized steps. Most things people talk about are giant chunks. They never want to break them down. They just want to be like, the left is like this and the right is like this, and I want to be a better parent. And it's like, what did any of those mean? Like,
okay, I understand. Well, we had a discussion about language. I think it was the first episode of our podcast where we talk about the differences of language. And you and I have had really great conversations privately about how important language is and being clear. Because what something means to me, it can mean a completely different thing to you. Same word, but means totally different things. So this makes a lot of sense.
So step one for you is to define what a better parent is for you.
So for me, being a better parent would probably be more contact with my children.
So, but for someone else, it might mean give my children more space because I'm a smothering, weird, crazy mom, right?
Right.
I want to be a better parent. If you went and talked to her, she'd be like, you need to give them more space. And you're like, what? No. And you guys start fighting. It's like, because you didn't define your terms. Okay. And logic is often starts with defining terms.
Okay. This is good. This is great.
If you say, I'm thirsty, I want to quench my thirst. It's like, okay, but what does quench your thirst mean? If I give you a beer that's actually going to dehydrate you, it's going to dehydrate you, and you don't even like the flavor, does that count? Because technically, isn't your thirst quenched?
No.
Like now you don't get your goal, right? Now you don't get your goal. And why? Because you didn't bother to clarify the terms and define the terms. If you just started with, you know what? I'm thirsty and I don't want a diuretic or something that's going to dehydrate me. Ideally, I'd like some water or some fruit juice. Now we have a clear goal that's achievable. Like, well, step one, well, there's no fruit juice in the fridge. I think I'm going to need to go to the store for this one. You know what? I'll go with water this time. Ta-da! Logical path found. But when you're just, I want to quench my thirst, and that's as much thinking as I want to do.
Right.
Then someone hands you a beer, or like you like.
I got you. So, like, if I said I want to be a better parent, and to my mother, that would be moving to Florida. To me, it just means instead of every other day contact with my kids, maybe every day.
Well, and to me, it means getting resources, because a parent is supposed to have the resources to do shit for their kids.
Yeah.
So if you need a private jet, get it. If you need a passport, get it. If you need time and space, secure yourself some time and freaking space. If you need mad money to fly your kid all over or buy them presents, get the mad money. I don't care what it is, but for me, being a better parent hinges on resources.
Fair play.
It's really tough to be a better parent without resources. I'd like to see someone try.
Yeah, I agree. So for me, it's when I use this phrase, it's just to like, I don't mean like seeing them all the time and being with them all the time, just open communication with them. I have a really not great habit of not texting people first or not reaching out when I'm not physically around them on a regular basis. So it's been a bit of a struggle with my kids because they tend to be the same way. And so we're living our own lives separately. So wanting to connect more with them, which of course I need resources for the phone, to make sure I can charge it and et cetera, et cetera. So it makes sense.
Or you might need an assistant to free up your time to talk on the phone all day. I don't know.
Right. Well,
again, resources.
But
in the meantime, what if you did a podcast or a bunch of podcasts on topics that are front and center in your children's mind? For example, one of your kids is all into video games. So you do a podcast on video games, or even better, their favorite video game.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
Over the moon.
Why not?
Yeah.
I can't talk about video games. I can't get deep into this or talk about a specific favorite game. Of course I can. Why not do one on being single, a single mom. We haven't done a podcast on single moms.
No, we have not.
Is that not relevant to one of your children?
It is relevant.
So
yes.
it's up to you. Like, you want to connect to them. I've just put a logical path.
Yeah.
Or at least one logical path.
Yeah.
Another logical path is to keep our podcast topics the same, make a huge splash in the industry, make a ton of money, and then hire a bunch of assistants and nannies and fly your kids everywhere and whatever. There's various logical paths, but we never would have got them if you thought better parent meant moving home, or better parent meant smother your kids.
Yeah.
To you, it meant more contact.
Yeah.
And that might involve other steps. Yeah. But as soon as you start breaking down that first word, all these thoughts come to mind. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. And so on. What are the logical steps to make that happen? Once I know I want X, what Y and Z do I need to get it? I wrote an article once, a blog post called How to Get Anything You Want.
You did.
And it really just explains a logical process. Name X what you want, figure out the steps, Y and Z, repeat Y and Z as much as you need to, make adjustments to A, B, and C if you have to, and you'll get your X, like you'll get your thing.
Yeah.
It's very logical.
Yeah. This is great. This is wonderful. Like, I'm so glad that I brought this up, because understanding that we have to understand what the thing we want is, to break it down, be logical about it, and really focus on the language we're using for ourselves. Because I may say, I want to connect more with my children, and that's still, to me, understand.
What does that mean?
To you and I both understand. We're together a long time, so you know what I mean. But if I say this to my mom again, she's going to say, "Oh, you connect, then move here. Move to Florida." But this is not connecting to me.
Logically, what does connect more mean to you?
It means having more communication.
But even more, how many per week? You see, logic is about getting specific and detailed to achievable steps. You can see this in a lot of movements. We want better rights. We want more pay. We want this, that, and they stay super general. It's like, okay, logically fine. Say we'll give it to you. Say we'll negotiate. What are you asking for? What do you want? More. It's like, no one can give you more. Here's $1 more. There, you have more. How can anyone logically interact with this? It's nonsense.
Agree.
Like, these words don't mean anything. Do you want X number of dollars? Do you want Y number of hours? What do you want? And so I want to connect. I want to be a better parent. Well, specifically, what do you want? And someone's like, my sex life isn't fulfilling. My love life is falling apart. It's like, well, what do you want? Well, I want more touch. Well, so then I don't.
Yeah.
No one can deliver for you. Yeah. You aren't clear on your goals, and you don't have a logically attainable thing. You have a general, vague thing that no one can do anything with. If you're not clear and you don't have a precise, clear thing that you want to attain, no one can get it for you. And this is why feminism keeps going first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, because they don't actually have a stopping point. Like, what's enough? What's an acceptable thing? What do you want? And when we give it, can we put this argument to bed? Yeah. If you finally have it, can we shut up? Like, if you're like, I want 5 massages a week, I'm like, all right, that's a lot. But if I do it, can I never hear about this again? Like, that's fair, right?
Right. This is so good. Okay. Thank you. And actually I had a discussion with someone recently when they were fighting for feminism. And I'm like, but you have this. What else do you want? Can you tell me really where you're suffering, and there was no,
I just want more.
It was, I'm stupid and I don't understand. Instead of giving me actual reasons and solutions and what they wanted, and it was, I'm dumb, I don't understand.
Sure, but if you're discussing something with someone who's not using logic, it's a write-off. It's a waste of your time. Like the online trolls or whoever they are, they don't use logic. And so you can't have a productive discussion, but they will suck you into an emotional discussion that will go forever. Yeah,
this is where I've learned this
not productive.
Wonderful, beautiful phrase that you taught me that has been such a lifesaver when I deal with these people online. And that's, thank you for your input.
Yeah.
It's such a brilliant line, but as a side thing. So thank you. I really appreciate this. So I found some logical fallacies online when I was doing my research. And really, this was the only thing I could find when I was looking for logic's information were fallacies over and over. But one of them kind of stuck out to me, probably because, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, I spend a lot of time online and I see people using this over and over, and it's called over-generalization. It has another name too, but this was easier for me to remember. So I want to read something to you and let me know if it's right or wrong. So basically, it's making a claim based on evidence that's just too small. So people who make a claim that something is true based on one or two points of data that or people they know or something small. So is that correct what it is?
Basically.
Okay. So how can I use logic to kind of counteract someone who's doing this to me in an argument online or in real life?
So I think the other name for it is hasty generalization, because it's when you generalize too quickly.
Oh, yes.
It's not necessarily an overgeneralization. I don't know. Whatever.
They used both words, but yes.
But the point is, basically, it's jump into conclusions. This is what people do all day long, jumping to conclusions. In logic, you methodically walk to a conclusion step by step. But people who abandon logic or are thinking more irrationally will just jump to a conclusion. They don't walk step by step. They see one thing or hear one story or see one interview clip, and they've jumped to some massive conclusions about life, society, the person, the interviewer, and so on. So usually if someone is jumping to a conclusion, they're not being very logical, and they're very unlikely to shift into logic anytime soon. Most people start off in a certain mode of thinking and they ride that out. They don't switch back and forth when they need to.
Right.
They don't say, oh, I feel sad right now. And then logically, I think it's due to some of the things I've been occurring in my work recently. And I feel like I miss my kids and I'd really like that to change. But logically, I know this alienation
I got you.
is a good, healthy process.
I've never heard anyone talk like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can switch back and forth, as I just showed.
Yeah.
I can be in my feelings, or I can start looking at things logically. But generally, most people pick a mode of thinking and ride it out for like the whole argument or the whole discussion or the whole conversation. Yes. So you're really just signing up for a nightmare if you try to have a logical discussion with an emotional person. I can attest to this because I've done it with you many times, arguing logically while you're just in your feelings. And it's like, it was just a giant waste of everyone's time. But if you're determined to do it, you can confront them or challenge them on their jumping to conclusions by asking questions. Stuff like, well, just because one person does it, is it reasonable to conclude that everyone's like this or the whole group is like this? Is that fair? You can ask them stuff like, isn't that what racists do? They meet one bad member of the race and they make a jump to conclusions about everyone. That's not cool, right? So maybe we shouldn't do that about the conservatives or the liberals or any other group. You can call them out. Like, just because you have one or two examples, is it fair to jump to that conclusion about a whole group? And most people will be like, yeah, right. It's my bad or whatever. You can also ask them questions about counterexamples. Like someone will say, all women are like this, or all men are like that. And this is a hasty overgeneralization. Yeah. Have you done the research? You have the data to prove that? Are you sure they're all like that? Or just the ones you know? Have you gone and checked Rwandan women, Zimbabwean women? Are they like that? I don't know. Like, what are you talking about? So you can call out exceptions or counter offers, counter examples. Well, what about pygmy women? What about all of China? What about Mongolia? These are huge chunks of the world. Are you sure your generalization holds up? So you can challenge them this way. There's stuff you can do, right? Like you can be a good lawyer and you can dismantle their arguments. But like I said, if they're just online trolls, or your spouse or whoever, and they've chosen an emotional mode, good luck with a logical discussion. Like you need to get them when they've chosen logic at the beginning, or you need to go talk to them in a quiet moment and start the conversation on a logic foot.
Well, this makes a lot of sense why a lot of the right and the left have a lot of trouble, because I think, to be honest, I think they're both coming at it with emotional.
They are, and they just go in circles.
They just are bumping heads like
but
this.
This is not how
reason.
this is not how you make a logical path to a solution.
No.
This is not how you come to a logical, healthy resolution to any issue. So I don't know why they're even opening their mouths. Like, I guess to vent and feel better or something, or feel self-righteous or self-important or whatever they're trying to do. I don't know.
Right.
But if they're actually seeking a solution, they should be talking from a logical standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And they should be seeking the truth, like I said, because logic will show the truth eventually. Even if it's a personal truth or of the moment truth or a subjective truth, it will still get to the truth eventually. Whereas emotions will just get you running in circles forever.
Fair play. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for talking about this. When we had started this conversation, if you had told me that it was going to go over an hour and I was going to have more questions and I would have more things to talk about, I would not have believed you, but it's true. And you were super helpful to me, helped me understand some things on camera, which I love. You're the best. Thank you for introducing this into my life so that I could be a better person and understand people also in a better way. This has been really, really helpful when I deal with the public. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have any final thoughts that you want to add? Things you want to say to our audience?
Yeah, real quick. Logic is a massive blessing. You can use it anytime. It will save you time. It will save you money. It will save you headaches. It will empower you. It will uplift you. It will help you achieve any goal you can think of. It is amazing for achieving goals. So it's very logical to just use it. Use it. Please. Use it. I just want a world where more people use it. And it's very illogical not to use it. I rest my case.
Sorry. And that's why our book and this podcast is called Eyes Wide Open.
Keep rising.